you happen to have do you happen to have your almanac, David?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi,
Uh-huh.
sorry. I am out by the pool. I do not have that with me.
Oh, that's okay. Looks like Carolyn does. Would, would you be so kind, Carolyn? I think you're muted right now.
There we go. As long as it's forward. Hear me?
Yes.
Okay. God, send me anywhere. Only go with me. Lay any burden on me. Only sustain me. And sever any tie in my heart except the tie that binds my heart to yours. If you have men who will only come if they know there is a good road, I don't want them. I want men who will come if there's no road at all. I will go anywhere, provided it be forward. David Livingston, 1813 to 1873.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, welcome to everybody to Gems from the Wisdom Traditions, our conversation circle that's sponsored by Still and Moving Center every Saturday. We really want to welcome you in particular to today's theme of the wisdom of Solomon, with Solomon's birthday being celebrated later this week.
Oh,
Uh-huh. And it's an unsubstantiated date, and yes, yet, it's a good thing to mark in somewhere in the year. So this is the best we have to go on. And that birthday, by the way, would have been 970 before the Common Era. Our speaker for today, our presenter, is going to be Sharona Gracia, who grew up in Cuba, where at the time, for example, when her mother was born, Christianity was outlawed. And she was from a family of pastors. However, it wasn't possible to be out in the open in regard to one's faith at that time without some kind of serious repercussions. Fortunately, by the time that Sharone came around, she was allowed to go to a church, and she very much enjoyed the biblical stories. So she is somewhat steeped in that tradition. Since coming to the United States and getting exposed to yoga, she's broadened her interest to other faiths, other beliefs. She has a very philosophical nature in whatever way she applies her mind, I've noticed. It's a very strong mind-heart strength that she brings. And we're very much looking forward to Sharoni giving us a presentation, and then she would like it to be very much a conversation. And she doesn't set herself up as an expert by any means on this, which is the approach that we have at Still and Moving Center, is that we're all lifelong learners. We always have our own inherent wisdom to share, and we always have a lot more to learn from one another. So, Sharoni, the wisdom of Solomon, what do you want to tell us about?
Thank you, Renee. What a lovely introduction. I just feel so blessed to be here and share with you all and learn from each other. Um, so the topic this week is the wisdom of Solomon. Like Renee mentioned, I have a very much philosophical nature in me, so I love learning about the different religions and spiritual practices. And for a long time, I was very drawn to Christianity and especially the stories. I think and the Bible. I think what we can learn from the Bible is really their stories. And I think Solomon, it's fascinating to me. Um, so yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about his wisdom and why his wisdom matter today. And first, I like to start by kind of giving a little definition of wisdom. Wisdom is our ability to make judgments and decisions based on knowledge, our experience, our understanding, and insight. I think it involves having a deep understanding of life, people, and situations, and being able to apply that understanding effectively in practical ways. When I think of wisdom, I think of discernment, right? The ability to discern things. And yeah, so Solomon was the son of King David. He is a prominent figure in the Bible and other religious texts. He ruled the kingdom of Israel around the 10th century BCE, and he was considered a wise king in ancient times. So, besides being very, very young when he ascended the throne, Solomon became known for his extraordinary wisdom and the ability of making smart decisions and helping people. Um, you can see this wisdom reflected in many stories. One of those stories is like once there were two women who came to Solomon, both claiming to be the mother of a baby. So Solomon had to decide who the real mother was. So he came up with a very clever plan. He suggested cutting the baby in half and giving each woman half of the baby. So one woman agreed, but the other woman said, no, you can let her have the baby. So Solomon knew instantly that the real mother was the one willing to give up the baby to save his life. And his decision just show how deep this understanding he's had for human nature and this wisdom in solving problems. Another story about his wisdom is there was a tricky visitor that came to his kingdom and challenged Solomon to guess which of the two identical boxes he brought in front of him held poison. And Solomon, because he was such a wise king, asked for a tiny bug to put in one of the boxes, in each box. And the bug that died, it was obviously the bugs that has the poison. So Solomon said, because that bug is alive in the safe one, that is the good one. So he basically outsmarted the visitor with his clever thinking. And there are many other stories that are very fascinating and interesting, and I think we can learn so much from it. Solomon is also known because of his proverb. Much of Solomon's wisdom is encapsulated in the book of Proverbs, and these are timeless sayings that offer a practical guidance of matters of morality, ethics. They help us understand how to live a good life. And I have a couple examples of these sayings. One is trusting the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. You can find this in Proverbs 3:5. And here you can see how Solomon's make emphasis in faith and humility. Trusting the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Another one is the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat his fruit. Words can spark conflict or they can calm tensions. So choosing wisely the way we speak and we express ourselves and the words we put out there, right? So there's so much we can learn for that Proverbs 18:21. And another one is better a little with contentment than much with anxiety. And this is, I think, is all about finding joy in what we have and bring that greater satisfaction than chasing more. A merry heart does good, like medicine, but a broken spirit dries up the bone. This is obviously that connection between a positive attitude and a good heart. And the last one say, however, whoever walks with the wise become wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harms. Here we can see how he emphasizes the importance of choosing our own companions wisely. because their behaviors can influence ours. And like that, there's so many other proverbs in the book of Solomon that we can learn from, and we can see his wisdom. Another thing about Solomon is the temple. Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem, also known as Solomon's Temple. It was a special place where people could worship and feel close to God. And this amazing structure became the center of Jewish worship and a symbol of the nation's unity during his reign. And if you go to the almanac, you can find a lot of quotes and reference to the temple. And there is a great video on YouTube that explains every single detail, how the temple was built, what it means. So I really recommend that. I can put it in the link later. And the other thing is, I think Solomon's legacy, even though Solomon lived a long time ago, we still talk about his wisdom today. These proverbs, his teachings about being smart and doing the right thing are timeless. It remains highly regarded in so many religions like Christianity, Judaism, Islam. His influence in ethical principles, philosophical thoughts, and literary works, they're still alive through history. So I think his legacy can live in the heart of those who seek wisdom and understanding of their own life. And I think what we can learn is that it's important to make good choices and help others, and to use our wisdom and our knowledge and our experience to make the world a better place for each other. So yeah, that's kind of like what I have for you today. I so love all the stories of the Bible, but I love that, you know, Solomon just in his heart, he really wanted to do good in his time being king of Israel. And he asked God for wisdom, and that's what God gave him. And he was able to lead everyone into a lot of abundance because he was good for what is not and to really do good. If any of you have more information or other facts and you know more about it, I would love to learn. But growing up, I really admire his story. It's very inspiring to seek that wisdom and seek that bigger understanding and greater good. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Renée.
Yeah.
I'd like to toss a question out to the group. I'm wondering about the way that Solomon sought to act justly. And so I'm kind of wondering about this ability to find the just solution or answer and wisdom. Because certainly in a court of justice in today's world, we probably wouldn't find somebody suggesting that we cut a baby in half. I mean, we go about searching for, you know, the justice of a situation in a legal realm in a very, very, very different way. In our everyday lives, we don't, I think, probably use that legalistic way. Maybe we use, I don't know. I just wanted to talk about wisdom and justice with that example of Solomon and the two women claiming the same baby. Aloha, Roger. I'm so glad you're joining us for the Wisdom of Solomon.
I was hoping to get a little wisdom. If there's something I need seriously, it's wisdom. And I'm sorry I came in late and I'm probably going to leave early, but I thought I'll take what I get.
You have any thoughts on wisdom and justice? Solomon had a very unique way of finding the justice of a situation when the two women claimed the same baby.
I remember the story. I never had it come up in my 50 years of law practice, though.
I bet you didn't. Just a different approach when you're wise, I guess.
Right.
Sharone, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. Because yeah, if we bring it to our new reality, this modern way of doing thing, it wouldn't make any sense. Imagine our president or somebody saying, "Yeah, let's cut the kid in half." But um, I think that's the beauty of these stories. It talks about discernment. I love the word discernment. It's like it's not about what's right or wrong. It's like about like what what feels, authentic in a way. So yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to hear Bob, if you have any word on this coming from a different totally tradition like Buddhist, right? How do
Well,
you
yeah.
look at it?
Well, Buddhism is definitely different. But what always impressed me about Solomon is that he's a human being, just as his father David was and Abraham. I mean, the Bible is filled with people who are struggling to do the best they can. Um, David, for example, united the kingdom, but God specifically said, "You cannot build the temple because you have blood on your hands." And the blood was not from the battles he fought, but that he had essentially uh, committed adultery, sent the husband of Bathsheba into battle, and he died. And that blood of one person done unjustly, as Renee said, was enough for God to say, "You cannot build the temple." Um, and it's interesting. God then asked Solomon, "What would you like? I will give you anything you want." And Solomon said, "I would like the wisdom to rule justly," which is the example you gave. Um, and that's kind of, as you look at it, um, it's not that cutting the baby in half is really a legalistic answer, even a moral answer. It's knowing that the love of a mother for her child is going to trump somebody wanting a child really, really badly, or whatever in this case. Um, so that kind of thing I think is important. And Solomon, of course, had to face the revolution of his own son, who said, "Well, I know I'm going to take over after you die, but I'd rather take over before you die." So he did a revolution and was killed. And so you have these constant struggles, and I love Solomon for, the books he is purported to have written, the Proverbs, as you mentioned, Ecclesiastes, he's said to have written almost all of it. And I guess the Song of Songs are the three in the Old Testament. Um, but you can learn a lot from just, trying to be wise. In my tradition, I think that's the Confucian side of really bringing your human heart to flourish. I mean, if you do that, then um, you're wise. I was reading recently a book by D.T. Suzuki, who introduced Zen to the West. And he said, "The heart of life is love." And I was trying to figure out how how he meant that. And as I read his article, it became clear that uh, life is full of connections, and love is the heart of connections. And so that's why love is at the heart of life. And I think wisdom works a little bit like that. If you can, find the heart of the connections, a mother for her child, then you can find wisdom. So uh, I think Solomon is so unique to the tradition of Christianity and Judaism that you just sort of have to take him within his tradition. but you can learn a great deal from how that works morally, psychologically, spiritually. Uh, I could make a comparison to the Bodhisattva path, but there's no reason to do that. Solomon is complete in and of himself. So that's all I have to share.
Thank you. Yeah, sucking it all in. I love that. Yeah, how you put all the dots together. Love the heart, the furnace, being just. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting that if you can find the heart of the connections, you can find justice. That's a really interesting point to think about a little bit, I think. For example, in this story that we were just talking about, there's a much stronger connection, a much stronger bond between the mother who had given birth to the baby and who cared the most about its well-being. The connection between the woman who simply wanted the baby for herself was a much weaker connection. It was not infused with love in the same way. It was infused with her own personal desire, but not that outgoing, extensive, compassionate love that the real mother had. So that is really interesting, and I think for people who have been parents or have been in some other situation where we have to adjudicate between, like warring siblings or people at work who aren't getting along together, we're not going to go through that legalistic process. We have to find another way to discern the justice of a situation and do our best to see that is that guides the next steps forward. So the better we are, I think, at understanding human nature and those connections between people, sounds like the better we're going to be at helping to see that justice is done. Do you have a further thought there, Roger?
Yeah, I came in, I missed the story. My understanding of the story briefly is that Solomon said, okay, here's the answer. We'll split the baby in half and you take half and the other one will take half. And the real mother said, of course we can't do that. But why would the other mother want half of a baby? What would that do for her? I mean, that's what I never understood about the story. It's like nobody would agree to cut the baby in half and take the top or the bottom. It wouldn't. That's not why you want the baby. So I wouldn't both of them say, "Hey Solomon, you're wise." Uh, and so as we were talking, I was trying to think, what is the moral here? What is it that that the story's trying to identify? As certainly the message is there that the real mother would want no harm to come to the baby, while the other mother would take in any form they could get, but certainly not the top half. So I was thinking as we were talking, what is it? Here's my expert on the Bible, just walked in, Miss Army. She heard our conversation.
Was the first to object.
The mother was the first to object, Army said. The other one thought about it for a while and didn't.
Like a real mother.
Yeah, it was her immediate, he could tell from the immediate reaction, whereas the other one started thinking, well, let's see, is this going to work? Or at least had to take, some time. So, see, that's why I listened to her for everything.
I actually have to say that I have a similar reaction when I heard this story many years ago. And today when I was preparing the presentation, I went through it again and I'm like, this is kind of funny. Doesn't make any sense. Why would the one that wants the baby want the other half? But I kind of like have this it's a story that it's supposed to make you think and feel something, right? And it's so absurd in a way that you have to stop and think about it. And I think that's the whole point. Like you have to read it and stop and like, what is this? And it's even funny, which I think it is funny. I think it was meant to be right. It was written in a way that's supposed to make you feel something and think about it. So as I was like asking myself the same question you were, I was just laughing. I'm like, of course, this is making me think. This is making me kind of like look at it and find where the wisdom in this is. I think if it was less silly or like less absurd, you wouldn't take the time to question it, right? And that's the whole point, to sit with it and see where's the wisdom here. Where's
Yeah.
the wisdom of Solomon? And that's why the story is so wise, I think. But I'm happy to share that with somebody else. I thought I was the only one like, okay, I'm not understanding. And it took me a minute. I'm like, oh, I get it now. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe there's a message too, I mean, just the message. Forget about the story or the metaphor. The message is that if you really love somebody, you're going to protect them no matter what. You've got to be 1,000% up there, and you can be identified as what Renee was just saying about love and how strong it is. And if the story makes you laugh a little bit, maybe the other part is Solomon never really intended he was going to cut the baby in half anyway, of course. But he just, this was his initial way to throw it out to see who
Yeah.
was the true mother. And the one who acted fastest, most powerfully, was the one he decided was really the mother. Of course, if they had DNA samples, we wouldn't have to worry about this story.
No, that's today's legalistic way. Well,
That
Carolyn,
love would be solved everything.
Carolyn, I see your hand up.
Do we have any stories or information about Solomon's interaction with other people? Jerusalem was a very crowded place and very diverse. Do we have any stories about how he governed in relation to people of other faiths and ethnic identity?
Must be lots of stories about Solomon.
Yeah. Yeah, he's said to be a very strong king, and it was a high point in uh, Jewish history.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious if he had a way of integrating everybody regardless of their faith or identity.
Mm.
Maybe one could find that more out in the different things that he wrote in Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, or the Song of Songs.
Mhm.
I wonder how we might unpack that story of the two boxes, one of which held poison and the other did not, and him putting the insect in each of the two boxes. And this is a stranger who came into the kingdom. What symbolically could be meant by the two boxes? Like, were they two different approaches to governing, for example? And one of which was going to have toxic results, and another of which would allow life to continue thriving. I would think there was more to it than bugs in a box. I mean, sort of when we go to the voting booth each time, we've got to we've got to choose between the dumb boxes. Sharon. Let's see, I think we need you to
I
unmute.
had a thought.
Yeah.
I took ancient Greek, and one of the things at the second year was that we did the translation of the New Testament. And I was thinking it's still a movie sent this almanac and the first announcement about what we're going to discuss. And it was by Helena Blavatsky. And it says The Wisdom of Solomon. And one of the things in the ancient Greek class we learned that it's interpretation of man, because you can read the same thing and see it in a different way or different light. And so there's like, even the New Testament was interpreted differently by different people. So in this thing by Helena, she says that the building of the Temple of Solomon is the manifestation of the power and splendor of the spirit in the physical world through the wisdom and genius of the builder. And I look at that as everyone being the builder. So in each house of Solomon, we have built what we believe is to be the wisdom and genius. And every person is different. And just like how the New Testament was interpreted by different people in different ways, also the wisdom of Solomon, the house is the same. We look at it in different eyes and different views. And so it's what we make in our world today to the risk and what we decide.
So are you sort of saying that the lives we build are actually the temples
Yeah.
that we inhabit?
Yes.
That's really beautiful. And that someone who is really wise is going to bring into this world the power and the splendor of the spirit. So they're not just bringing, for example, their worldly knowledge or experience. They're bringing something much deeper, and part of their wisdom, it sounds like, from what Sharone was explaining to us, wisdom to be, is to bring understanding and experience into the world. So this wise person bringing the power and the splendor of the spirit into the world knows how to apply it in their lives. It's not just setting up an edifice. It's a whole procedure, or I don't know exactly. That's just a start of a follow-up on what you're saying, Sharon. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's because each builder is different. It's like interpretation of the New Testament. Each one is different. And who's to say which is the wisest or which is the one that has the most splendor? So I feel like Helena has told us that, or saying to us that it's with each builder, and we make our decision and we do what we believe is to. And so there's a line of between what is right and wrong, and a lot of people cross it. And the more they cross it, the further they go over the line. So I think sometimes and every person looks at the line as a different thing. But so I feel she's saying that within each of us, we're the builders, and we decide what is the splendor and the wisdom, and we create it. Know how that we're capable of.
Uh-huh.
That's a really nice thought for me. I spent years as a lawyer watching people with those lines, drawing their own lines, deciding what was appropriate. And I experienced exactly what Sharon was just saying. Once you cross the line, you would never go back in front of that line again. You'd crossed it. And then the next line came up and you were more likely to cross that line. And I actually, without getting into any details, saw some real psychological and psychologically induced physical things happening to people because they lost their integrity and they went over the line. And I remember early in my career being asked to cross the line and coming up with a Solomon-like solution. And literally, and it was a good decision. It was a good thing that I weaseled my way out of being asked to do something that I would have at the time certainly felt to be totally out of integrity for both me and the client. So I think that's a terrific lesson to focus on, and one that I hadn't ever thought about in terms of Solomon. So thank you.
Thank you. Bob, I think your hand was up.
Yeah, it actually draws on Roger's point. Solomon was very specific when he said, that he wanted that understanding for himself to judge well, to rule well. But he said, never put your personal understanding above the understanding of God. So crossing the line is putting yourself, in terms of your understanding of the situation, somehow above what God says, God's understanding. So there's a certain, and that may be something as simple as the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But you're pushing it out of your own circle of understanding into a higher form. And Solomon is known for ruling well. He expanded the kingdom way beyond what David had by conquest. And there again, at some point, did Solomon ever cross the line himself? And you'd have to say he did. I mean, he had 600 wives and 300 concubines. Well, a lot of those wives and concubines were ways of spreading the kingdom. Yes, we'd like to unite with you. I'll marry your daughter. And the kingdom gets bigger and bigger. And he has not just one wife, but he has essentially 900, depending on how you count.
That's a lot better. That's a lot better than going to war and killing people.
It is. And
all the
so,
way
but
around.
again, you have to kind of judge that case by case. And at what point are you still doing God? Are you still acting according to God's understanding? And it's a dance that you learn how to do. And crossing the line is, I think, really the heart of the question. At what point do you lose that element, that you somehow see your wisdom as greater than God's wisdom? And that's the same as in the Confucian world. It's doing the best you can with the relations you have. The rectification of names is, and again, this is the story of the cutting the baby in half. What would a true and good mother do? It's not what every mother would do. Not all mothers are really good mothers. I mean, we're talking about the ideal mother, the mother who really truly does care. And there's an element of care in there that's true of all mothers, but you're really looking at the heart of it. What would a good elder brother do? And then you can ask the flip side, what would a poor mother do? What would a poor elder brother do? What would a poor friend do? They wouldn't live up to the name and the ideal behind it. And that's, I think, what Solomon's getting at when he says, I put the understanding of God above my own understanding. It's a way of looking at, as a human being, when do we cross a line? When have we made a mistake? When have we been a bad friend or a poor friend?
Other thoughts?
Well, would anyone like to follow up on the equation made at the beginning that wisdom is discernment? What's characteristic of discernment and how do you develop it? Any ideas?
I'm calling to mind a phrase from a set of aphorisms, the Aquarian aphorisms, that were pulled together by Helena Blavatsky, who, as was mentioned, has the opening quote for the week in the Still and Moving Center Almanac. And she says that spirituality is not what we understand by the words virtue and goodness. It is the power of discerning formless spiritual essences. The power of discerning formless spiritual essences. I wonder how that might help us with your question, Carolyn. It seems as though it has something to do with looking beneath the surface, seeing to essences, perhaps.
Maybe insight is a pretty good word to bring in there.
Yeah.
Hi, I just find a book. It's called All That's Good by Hannah Henderson. She's a Christian, and it's big on discernment. And I just want to read this quote by her. Actually, it's not by her, it's by Henry Newen. It says, discernment is not about judging other people's motive. It's about distinguishing good guidance from harmful messages and the Holy Spirit from evil spirits. Forget about the last part, but I think what he says about distinguishing good guidance for harmful messages is just the most valuable part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's not about judging others' motive. It's about distinguishing good guidance from harmful messages.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could those be represented by those two boxes? I would imagine, in terms of your question of how we develop that kind of wisdom, that discernment, a lot of it's going to be trial and error, and it's going to be having the confidence to be willing to make errors, and because we really can't advance forward without, at point in time, making a quote unquote error. I don't know at what point an error becomes stepping over the line, but I mean, maybe bumping into the line and finding we have to, make our way back to center again.
Well, that's the beauty of the two boxes. I mean, it addresses your point exactly. I mean, you've only got two choices in the world: do good or do evil. This kind of exemplifies that. In other words, are you going to make a mistake? Well, is your action toxic in some way? Eventually, that's the box you don't want to have. And on the other hand, the other is allowing the insect to flourish. So is the choice toxic or good? That kind of thing. That's what we're learning to deal. And then the important thing is to expand beyond just simply toxic as poison, but in the Buddhist tradition, right speech. There's toxic speech and there's right speech. There's hurting other people and not hurting other people. In other words, knowing what is toxic and knowing what it does to you and to others, doing harm, is the box you want to avoid. And the box you want to keep is the one that allows for things to flourish. So it's really an excellent guide for you, except the guide is experiential. The bug is going to die. The box is toxic. If you do it too quick, you may take toxic. Oh, yeah, the bug's doing fine. Well, no, it's dying slowly and it looks like it's doing fine. You've got to really measure that for yourself. I think another word along with discernment that fits in here is the word emulation. In other words, if you're looking at which box is toxic, what would Jesus do? You would emulate the actions of Jesus through his parables. Those are good guides to how you would, you should treat the Samaritan with kindness. That's the box that allows you to live. Treating him unkindly, throwing him into the ditch, running away are toxic responses. And all the parables work that way. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. I mean, casting the first stone is toxic. And so, and the attitude is, I'm wise enough to make that decision, as opposed to the non-toxic box. Anyway, I think emulation is something you can do. In the Confucian context, you emulate who you think to be a truly wise person. And in that context, what would a wise person do? It gives you a guide, and the guide really tells you what is life enhancing and what is toxic. So I love those two boxes as a metaphor for every choice you make. Because, you know, I'm watching too much television, toxic, sorry, it just isn't healthy for you. Reading too much news, or again, the judgments you make because of it. I was reading a book recently on the history of liberal democracy in America, and the book was called Illiberalism. And our country has gone between the two, not just today, where we're obviously close to a civil war, but historically, that's been the case. I mean, we have a liberal sort of swing motion, and then we have a reaction to it. And the reaction is one that's racist or gender toxic, those kinds of things. So we can look at our history even and say, you know, we've got some good moments. When Lincoln said, all men are created equal, going back to the Declaration of Independence, that's hitting the heart of our liberal heritage. But, you know, you can look at all kinds of things, Jim Crow, other parts of our history that has been very, very negative, even more negative than today.
Yeah. I think you're right in terms of the boxes, though even Solomon couldn't tell the difference between the toxic box and the flourishing box until he put those insects in. So sometimes we have to make an effort because we really don't know, even using our best judgment, even, you know, seeking to emulate whoever the wisest person we can think of, you know, having some say in the matter, we still don't know. And we're, you know, I think there's a bravery in going ahead and just trying it to the best of our ability. Well, I think this one probably is the best one. And then we find out. Otherwise, you don't learn.
It's experiential. We have to learn through the experience of it. And
Yeah.
we're not all things are toxic for all people in the same way. You know, certain experiences have guided us, as Roger was saying. You know, I've learned some lessons over my career dealing with people, and I've, you know, made some mistakes possibly, and I've learned from those. You know, again, it's kind of what turns out to be toxic is nurturing if you can figure out how and why it's toxic. You need to know why not the box is toxic, not just that it's toxic. I think that seems to be a fundamental part of it. And I think that's what, coming back to Solomon, that's putting something outside of your own understanding. You're allowing for a greater understanding. What would a truly good person do? What would a good lawyer do? What would a good friend do?
Yeah. What are you coming to, Sharoni?
Oh, I'm just hearing all of it, and yeah, I just agree that it's experimental. It's an ability. It's a skill that we just develop. And it comes back to what Carolyn asked, like what's discernment? Like I love that word and that concept, and I read so much about it. And Celia, when she asked about it, I was just like, what is it about it? And yeah, it's an ability that we do, that we gain. It's, you know, it's learning how to see things more clearly, how to make better judgment. It's not something that we're able to do, but we practice and we learn by experience, by doing it over and over again. Yeah.
And falling on our face, or, you know,
Yep. Yeah. I think that's what I love it so much because it comes with time. Yeah, it comes with that experience. Like you can have discernment, you can have that if you don't, like you said, put yourself out there, you do it, you experience it. Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to note that Solomon was a poet. Solomon wrote music, was an artist. And if you ask, how does an artist create a great work of art? Part of that is putting the pieces together and having them fit. In other words, what fits the situation? As Roger said, it's probably not a really good legal answer to cut the baby or threaten to cut the baby in half, but it fit this situation because he could see those two people. He could tell almost immediately which one had a love and which one had a lack of love. So the fitting answer, and if you fit the pieces together, you have a beautiful poem or a beautiful proverb or a beautiful song. And one thing that's consistent about Solomon is that he could write beautiful music and he could, in a sense, rule beautifully. And I think that's finding what fits. And that's a special eye, too.
Kirk, I'm not sure whether you're able to share with us, but I do know that there is going to be a linkage between this idea of building of the Temple of Solomon and your conversation on the Sphinx, which is, in a way, I mean, we do have a Sphinx that serves as a temple, I believe. So I wonder if you want to make any kind of linkage at the end of this presentation, moving into what we'll be hearing from you next week with this building of the temple.
Well, I've been enjoying the discussion very much. I appreciate all the contributions. And also Carolyn's question, I think, does point to a core idea connected with the Sphinx, at least as far as I understand it, and as it occurs in different cultures in different ways, but that the cultivation of discernment has such a it's like a receding horizon in the sense that it's not only is it something that we evolve into, but that it's not like a final destination either, like enlightenment in a sense, right? That that the further we go, the more we realize all the subtleties that are involved in every decision that we make and all the complexities, and that it's never black and white. It's always infinite shades of gray, and has more to do with, internal states rather than something external that you can define by some external sign. So that's why the ideas that is associated with the Sphinx is this idea of the seer, right, whose vision penetrates all the external layers of nature and gets to the very essence of things. And so, yeah, I think that theme in itself is very much connected with the Sphinx. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Wow, that's very enticing. Yeah, I like that idea of piercing, penetrating the layers. And it does seem that that is something about what happens with discernment, is we get to a certain level, and we hadn't been able to see beyond that until we get there. And then once we get there, we can see a little bit farther. It's like with each step that we take, more and more is revealed to us. And we can't jump ahead. We have to take each of those you know, veils and go through each one of them one at a time, it seems.
You know, the other thing the Sphinx represents in some cultures is like the protector of the Dharma, the guardian of the Dharma. And why does the Dharma need a protector? It's because it can be misused, right? And so what is it that prepares one properly to be a proper recipient of the deeper teachings of great teachers? And a part of that is a core element, of course, is that ethical discernment, purification of motive. Why is it that one wants to learn the deepest secrets of human nature? Is it to benefit others, or is it to benefit oneself in some way? And you could even connect it up with that, you know, the killing of the baby parable. That because you could say that the hidden motive of one was self-seeking, whereas the undeniable motive of the other was for the benefit of the baby. And just because of that subtle, that inner difference, which could not be discerned from the outside without, advanced genetics. It cannot be discerned from the outside. So how do you reveal the hidden motive? You raise the right question. Solomon had that key question, and it revealed itself. You know, so that's I think that kind of discernment that really wise people have. You know, it uncovers what is hidden in that way.
It's interesting too that if we look at the Temple of Solomon, what was the Temple of Solomon? How did it work? In the Temple of Solomon, there is a place in the back of the temple called the Holy of Holies. And there is a shroud, and only the priests could go into that section. And what was found in the Holy of Holies was the Ark of the Covenant. That was the Israelites' connection with God. They carried it 40 days and 40 nights through the desert. This was the promise that they were God's people, that God would be there to help them. So in a sense, the Temple of Solomon worked, even though it was beautiful and built of Lebanese cedars and beautiful materials and gold and silver and all of this stuff. The heart of the temple was the Holy of Holies, the connection with God, literally there. This was God's promise to be always there for them. So that's kind of interesting in the sense of the Sphinx too.
Yes, it is. That's a great connection, Bob. In fact, our time is up, but I'll connect it up next week. But that there was a book written by a mathematician. This was in the late 1800s, where he found a connection between the dimensions of Solomon's temple and the features and proportions of the pyramids. So that's a very interesting link. But he also saw that it was a universal tradition, right? It was not isolated. That was one of the great factors of the discovery. Was this is not esoteric knowledge that was confined to any particular tradition. It's a universal tradition, and that it is right. It has to do with the uncovery of that which is hidden, the mysteries of nature, our true nature. So anyway, we'll leave it.
Enticing. And we started out with somebody mentioning connections at the beginning of our conversation, it was Bob. You can, if you can find the heart of connections, you can find justice. David, would you like to finish us up with your comment and maybe a vote of thanks?
Yeah. So I was out by the pool in the sun, and about midway, I just was completely out. So it washed over me. And then I was around for the last 10 minutes. And it just reminds me so much. I just watched a documentary on puberty. and the changes that actually happen in the mapping of the brain. And discernment happens here in the prefrontal cortex, the last part of the brain to develop. And I really see this whole connection of the story of the Ark of the Covenant, because it's really a matter that thing works better and is better able to discern with more maturation. And so it's really, it may be wisdom is really just about how many of those connections can you make, because the whole prefrontal cortex is really just all these synapses connecting. They say there are more connections in a prefrontal cortex than there are stars in the sky. That's some pretty dense matter. And through that density comes our ability to, it's really like these large language models, right? The more they consume, the better they are able to answer the question. So it perfectly maps to the brain. So maybe Solomon was just a story.
And I would like to close in a very unusual way. So instead of any of you giving a both of thank you to me, I want to give a both of thank you to you guys, because I came here with very basic knowledge, stories I heard of Solomon growing up. Never really thought about it beyond what just is like a story and his wisdom, and that's it. And I feel like now I make so many new connections in my front cortex. This experience itself just feel gave me a lot of discernment for that story to get things from it. And just want to say thank you. I love this community and love learning from you guys. So I want to say both a thank you to you, because yeah,
You're awesome, Sharonee.
helping me grow. Thank you.
That was brilliant. Turn around and thank the group. That's brilliant.
Very discerning.
Yes.
So we will hear from Kirk next week on the
Looking forward to
Egyptian
it.
and also the Greek traditions in regard to the Sphinx. And the week after that, we'll be taking up even though it's from a Buddhist paramita, dana, the virtue of charity, we're going to approach it with Mary Bird. And I'm guessing it's going to be from the Catholic or at least Christian tradition. So I think that will be wonderful to approach that, because it's such a universal virtue, that of charity. So thank you all so much, and especially Sharonee, thank you for just opening a beautiful treasure box for all of us.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Bye. Bye.